Today I'm going to be talking about 10 books that I want to read before I die. Now, these are very specific books because if I were to make a video about all the books I want to read before I die, it would be a very large list because I want to read every single book in the world before I die, but that's just not possible. So I'm just going to be talking about 10 specific books that I desire to read before I die. Without further ado, let's just get straight into it. The first isn't really a single book, it's more of a series of books, I guess you would say. It is the collected poems of J.R.R. Tolkien. These are all the poems that Tolkien ever wrote in his life, published across 3 volumes in this beautiful box set, which I just love. Fantastic box set. I love it. I've already cracked some of these open to a random page and just read some of the poems that I found there. And I love poetry, and Tolkien, I think, is the greatest poet I've ever read. Obviously, like, Edgar Allan Poe and William Shakespeare are up there as well, but Tolkien is definitely my most favorite poet, as well as being my most favorite author. And I just love Tolkien's poetry. Tolkien was a linguist and a master of words and poetry, and you can really tell in his poems. The poems that I have read from Tolkien so far, I have absolutely enjoyed, and so I do want to read all of his poems someday in these 3 volumes before I die, which I should be able to do soon. And I think I will definitely read every single one of these books on this list before I die, because I've got a ways to go yet. If I want to die by old age, I'm still pretty young. You know, as long as I don't, like, die from a car accident or a disease or something. The next book that I want to read before I die is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Now, this is a book that I'm definitely going to read very soon. Probably by the end of the year, I'll have read this book, or at least hopefully that's what I'm aiming to do. But I've heard a lot of good stuff about Jane Austen. And I've heard that, like, Pride and Prejudice is sort of like a historical romance, I think. And I don't think I've ever read, like, a single romance novel in my entire life. But since this is a classic, I am definitely going to read it before I die. And this is Pride and Prejudice. I've been wanting to read this for years, actually. And I'm actually really looking forward to reading this book later this year. I might even get to this book in this next month, maybe the month after that. I'm not sure. I am aiming to read this book by the end of the year. I also do want to read all the works of Charles Dickens. I'm ashamed to say, I haven't really read much Charles Dickens, but he sounds like an author that I would absolutely enjoy. I've heard his books are humorous, which I love a humorous story, when it's done well, of course. I love a humorous novel when it's done correctly, like The Phantom Tollbooth. Absolutely love that book. Fantastic book. And just, Charles Dickens sounds like an author that I would enjoy so much. And I have here just his 3 most major works. A Tale of Two Cities, Great Expectations, and Oliver Twist. These aren't all of the works of Charles Dickens, these are just the ones that I own. And I gotta say, I really want to read Charles Dickens. I've heard a ton about Charles Dickens, and I've read a little bit of his works. I remember I read, like, the first chapter of Oliver Twist once, but I don't know why. I just set it down. I have no idea why. But I really want to read all of Charles Dickens' books, all of his works someday, because he just sounds like an author that I really enjoy. His books are classics, which I have really been getting into classics. I mainly read from fantasy, but I've been getting really into classics, and I'm finding that I actually really enjoy them. I've always sort of loved older literature much more than literature written in the late 20th and 21st century. With a few exceptions, you know, like the Green Ember series right here was a series published within the past decade, and it is my second favorite book series. And of course, I move over here, there's the Wingfeather Saga, which was all published in the 21st century. There's also Harry Potter, which is a modern series of novels, but I love them very much. But mostly, I've just found that more older and ancient works of literature, I just enjoy them much more than a lot of modern literature, because ancient literature, like classics, just have so much thought put into them by the authors. And I've been loving all the classics that I've been reading recently, like Frankenstein. That book was so good. Everyone needs to read that book. I'm going off into a bit of a tangent, but I also love humorous novels when they're done well. Like here, Mooses with Bazookas and Other Stories Children Should Never Read by S.D. Smith, who is one of my favorite authors. This book was absolutely hilarious. I love the humor. And, you know, I like the humor in Diary of a Wimpy Kid as well. Although, you know, it's not top 10 or whatever. I read Diary of a Wimpy Kid when I want something light and just sort of mildly fun. But yeah, I really do want to read Charles Dickens. He sounds like an author that I would absolutely enjoy, and I do want to get into his books soon. Definitely want to read all of his works before I die. I do also want to read the complete works of William Shakespeare. I want to read everything that Shakespeare's written before I die, because I recently have been getting really into Shakespeare. I read Hamlet, All's Well That Ends Well, and I finished The Tempest just a couple days ago, which I absolutely loved. I'm finding Shakespeare to be such an enjoyable author, and a lot of his works are very difficult to understand. They are a bit hard to digest, but I just enjoy them so much. Like, once you get used to Shakespeare's writing and once you can understand his language well, he's just such a great author, truly a master of the English language. I can totally see why he's considered the greatest writer in the English language. I absolutely love every work of Shakespeare that I've read so far, so I do want to read all of his works someday, although who knows how long it'll take me. This thing is enormous. I love Shakespeare's poems and his plays, of course. Everything Shakespeare's written has just been fantastic, and the way his writing flows, the way the language sounds, especially when you read it aloud, is just... Shakespeare's such a great author. I think everyone should read Shakespeare. I know a lot of people find it to be dull and boring, but I love it so much. I do also want to read the entire Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I don't have any of the physical books here. I am planning on starting the Wheel of Time soon. The Wheel of Time is a 14-book fantasy epic that I've heard so much about. I've heard people say that the books are on the same level as The Lord of the Rings, but that's gonna be kind of hard to beat. I've been wanting to read The Wheel of Time for a while, actually, but I've just been reading a ton of other books that I've really been enjoying recently that I just haven't gotten around to it, but I do definitely want to read the entire Wheel of Time before I die. All those books are like over 700 pages though, and I've heard that they're very slow-paced. I'm fine with a slow-paced novel as long as it's done well, but when the author is just making the book slow-paced on purpose just to lengthen it, like that's what I kind of feel like Brandon Sanderson did with the Stormlight Archive. I do like the Stormlight Archive series, but those books are enormous and they're so slow-paced, it does kind of feel like Sanderson is just trying to make them as long as he possibly can. So I can really enjoy a slow-paced novel if it's done well, but if the author is just trying to make it slow-paced just for the sake of making the novel as long as possible, I find it just not to be that enjoyable. I don't know, we'll see though. I'm not going to judge this series at all since I haven't read it yet, but I've heard a lot of varied opinions on it. I've also heard, like, the first 2 or 3 books especially are kind of like a ripoff of Lord of the Rings, or not a ripoff, they're just very similar to the Lord of the Rings. And Lord of the Rings is one of my favorite series of all time. I love a book that captures the intent of the Lord of the Rings, but not a book that just tries to be the Lord of the Rings. So I feel like if I can get past the slow pacing of the books, and kind of how the earlier books are kind of copying off of Tolkien, I will really enjoy this series. I've heard a lot of good things about it, and a lot of bad things about it, and that's really intriguing to me when I hear a lot of varied opinions on a book, so I definitely do want to read this entire series before I die, and hopefully I will start reading it soon, within the next couple of months. The next books, 2 books that I want to read before I die, although I'm going to count them as 1 book because I have them all in this handy volume that has them all in 1 volume. I want to read the Iliad and the Odyssey. So I've started the Iliad several times, and I just could not get past the first 10 chapters. The first 10 chapters of the Iliad weren't bad. I did enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed the language, Homer's writing. I did really enjoy the way the poetry flowed. I love poetry, of course. but just, it was very, very repetitive, and I was kind of getting bored, and it was almost pushing me into a reading slump, and I hate it when I get into a reading slump, so to avoid that reading slump, I just set it aside several times, but I need to get through the Iliad. I've also heard that the Odyssey is a lot better than the Iliad, so as long as I can get through the Iliad, I feel like I'll be able to enjoy the Odyssey. And I'm actually thinking I might read the Odyssey first, even though the Iliad takes place before the Odyssey, but I already know how the story of the Iliad ends, which I'm pretty sure everyone does, so I feel like I shouldn't have a problem reading the Odyssey first. I don't know, though. But I do want to read the Iliad and the Odyssey someday before I die. Another series I want to read, but I haven't yet, is the Red Rising series. And I don't have any of the physical books here, of course. I've heard a lot of good things about the Red Rising series, and I have had it recommended to me several times. I've heard that it's basically the Hunger Games, but on Mars. But other than that, I don't really know anything about it. But I do definitely want to read this series before I die, because I've just heard a lot about it, so I do definitely want to read it someday. Another series is the Percy Jackson series. I've heard a ton about this series, but I haven't actually read it yet. I've heard that it's kind of similar to Harry Potter, and that it has something to do with Greek myths, but other than that, I don't really know anything about this series, but I've just heard a lot about it, and it sounds really, really intriguing. They're like, I think like Greek myths told from a modern perspective or something, or is it like a person from today who goes back to Greek, who goes inside Greek myths? I'm not sure. Something involving Greek myths and modernity. But so I am looking forward to reading this series someday in the future because I've had it recommended to me a lot. Okay, next up, The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This book is enormous, and I don't know anything about it, like, literally at all. I've paged through it a bit, but I haven't read the description on the back, haven't read any reviews for it or anything. I know nothing about this book besides that it's on the list of 100 books that everyone should read before they die, which I have printed out. I'm trying to make my way through that list slowly but surely, and I have heard that this book is very good. I've heard that it's the greatest novel ever written. And if it's the greatest novel ever written, then it's gotta be pretty good to be better than The Lord of the Rings. So, if this truly is the greatest novel ever written, I'm definitely going to read it. Also, again, I don't have a physical copy of this book here. The next book is also considered one of the greatest novels ever written, and it is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. This book is over like 1,000 pages, I think it's like 1,500 pages or something, and I've heard that's sort of like a history, which I'm not very fond of history, especially American history. I find like English history to be fascinating, but just American history isn't really my thing, or really history in general. Unless it's a made-up history for a fantasy world like the Silmarillion is, then I really enjoy it. But history really isn't my thing. But then, and I've heard this book is very dry, very boring, people couldn't get through it. So then, why on earth would I want to read War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy? Well, I want to read it because people have told me that I can't read it, that it's too hard for me to read, and I like a challenge as long as it's not a physical challenge. I love challenges, but not physical ones. And who knows, maybe I might end up enjoying it, I'm not sure. But I've heard that it's the greatest novel ever written, and if it's the greatest novel ever written, then again, it's gotta be pretty good. So, let me see, was that 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, wait, let me recount that. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, I think I did only 9 books. But for my 10th book I want to read before I die, I'm just gonna say all the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien is my favorite author, and I've probably read like 70-ish% of all that he's written, but Tolkien has written a lot. He's written like over 50 books, and I definitely do want to read all of those before I die, because again, J.R.R. Tolkien is my most favorite author in the world, and I definitely do want to read all of his works someday, which I'm working on it, and I'm getting near the end, so I think I'll be able to do that before I die. But anyway, those were 10 books that I want to read before I die. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thanks for watching it. You should let me know what you think of Red Rising, Wheel of Time, Charles Dickens, and all these other books on this list. Especially Brothers Karamazov and War and Peace. I'm interested to know what you think of them. So tell me what you thought of these books if you've read any of the ones on this list. Just don't give me any spoilers for them because I don't want that before I read them. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and for now, farewell.